Yep, love it. And like Gene, definitely love making a difference and working with students and um, becoming able to make a difference in their lives and make changes to the program.
Okay, that's awesome. Dr. Black, what about you?
Yeah, so in my case, interesting story. So my parents are both graduates from FAMU.
Right.
My mother and father actually also got married on campus on
Wow.
graduation day. So they literally
Okay.
walked from the gymnasium to the basement of one of the dorms and
Wow.
got married.
That's
So FAMU's kind of always been in my life and in my family. However,
awesome.
when I was a kid, I grew up in Westchester County, New York, and
Okay.
my mother was working at IBM, IBM Watson in Yorktown. Um, but there weren't any, there wasn't much of a discussion about HBCUs in the community, right?
Mhm.
So just because there aren't any HBCUs in Westchester County, so
Right.
no one talked about HBCUs. I knew I was going to college because my mother said, "You're going to college or you're going to the army. Those are your choices." Um, I didn't want to go to the army because I didn't want to get shot at. So I
I hear you.
knew I was going to college. So I kind of started getting myself together for college.
Okay.
We moved to Tallahassee when I was in middle school or so, and my mother started working on campus at FAMU.
Okay.
So she would drive me up on campus all the time as a way of keeping me from hanging out in the street in the summertime. And, I was be sitting in the back of her Fortran classes, not by choice, but I was back there. So I kind of got exposed to the FAMU college life
Hmm.
early on.
Okay.
Still not wasn't necessarily thinking about going to FAMU, but then President Humphreys, who we were talking about earlier, Frederick Humphreys, former
Rest in
president,
peace, Dr.
recently
Humphrey.
passed, came
Right.
to my senior class and offered me a scholarship,
Okay.
full ride scholarship. So I came in, went to FAMU. While I was working on my graduate work at Georgia Tech, I realized there wasn't a whole lot of, or really weren't any Black professors in computer science at Georgia
Okay.
Tech, and I wasn't meeting very many in the industry. I mean, as I
Okay.
moved around, so I
Hmm.
decided I wanted to go back and try to increase that number. So once I got my PhD from Florida State, which is
Hmm.
literally across the street from FAMU, while I was working on that, I was also beginning to teach at FAMU.
Okay.
So once I got my degree, I just stayed and been very happy that I did ever since. So that's my family story.
Thank you for sharing that. And there was a scene that I kind of heard from each one of you, and that was the student population and kind of the family environment and how you all took to that challenge of grooming those students. I know when I was at FAMU, there was the slogan was excellence with caring. So kind of what were some of the most notable moments at those HBCUs interacting with some of those students and grooming the professionals of the future?
I'll jump in on that.
All right.
Okay. For me, um, it because we always wanted to be there, at that age, at an HBCU.
Okay.
But I'll tell you something. Looking at a student when they come in as a freshman,
Hmm.
okay, and many of our majors have never programmed anything.
Wow.
Okay, so they come in saying, "This is what I want to do," but many of them, at least at Hampton, many
Mhm.
of them haven't programmed before.
I hear
Okay,
you.
somebody they heard about it, they know about it, but they hadn't done it.
Hmm.
And it is our challenge to make sure maybe they didn't even have it in their high school. Maybe no one even they didn't even have the exposure,
Hmm.
okay, to even practice this. But this is
Okay.
something they said they thought they wanted to do. And
Okay.
we looked at it as our mission to make sure that they felt they could do it. So
Hmm.
that's the biggest problem, especially in tech, right? Because you got math, you have all these other classes,
Hmm.
everyone thinks it's hard.
Hmm.
Our primary mission there is to make sure they understand that they can do it. They look at
Wow.
us, we look like them,
Hmm.
okay? And so we did it. We tell them our story. We say, yes, this is a tough major, but we look them in the eye and say, you can do this. And then we
Wow.
take the care, right? Provide them the skills, Provide them those summer workshops before they even get there, because we have a pre-college program. Bring them in and let them know this is doable. And every day they look at you, they know it's doable because you've done it.
I hear
We
you.
bring back the alums and they stand in front of them and say, I did it. Yes, it
Wow.
was a little struggle. Yes, it was a little hard,
Mhm.
but we're able to do it. And we push that kind of role modeling and the fact that we do care about them. Now, wait, let me say one thing.
Mhm.
Caring about them does not mean that we're going to give them a grade they don't deserve.
Facts.
Okay, because let me say this and I'll stop. If you do that, right, you are doing them a disservice.
Talk about it.
Okay, you have to make sure that they are, when they walk out that door, that they have the skills to be successful in this world, that they are truly a minority,
Mhm.
because there's very few of us in this field. And so if we just slide them along, we can't do that. We have
Mhm.
to make sure that when they walk out of there with that diploma and the job that they're going to, that they are capable. So whatever it takes for us to do that, that's our mission, to make sure that we do.
I like that because number one, you said no, the students a lot of times had no programming experience, right?
Right.
And that was one of my experiences coming into FAMU. And I remember one of my introductory C++ courses was a gaming course. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Black, you was teaching that course, right? And
Yep.
so I think it was one of the first times where FAMU was experimenting with a new approach to teaching programming. And it worked for me in that course, right? And so I'll open that up to Dr. Gaucher and Dr. Black. In terms of those students and that excellence with caring, what are some of your most notable moments grooming the next generation of professionals?
Yeah, well, you just said it. I mean, really, I kind of chalk it up to the professional experience that
Mhm.
students get and
Yeah,
the preparation.
I hear you.
So when we talk about the preparation, basically what you just said was what I was going to talk about. The
Wow.
fact that there's so much that we get to do at HBCUs
Hmm.
because unlike your predominantly white institutions, our
Hmm.
teaching load often is more educationally focused, right? So we
Right.
end up having more classes. Now, a lot of
Hmm.
people at the majority of schools might say, well, that's a negative because that
Hmm.
keeps you from being able to do research.
Right.
But really, I look at it almost from the opposite perspective because
Hmm.
what you can do is tie that research into what you do in the classroom,
Wow.
right? So
Mm.
that's what I always try to do
Right.
in all the classes, and I still do it even though I'm in the School of Business.
Hmm.
We're doing things with business analytics that is not in the curriculum, but
Right.
we're able to experiment with a lot of things and expose students to a lot of tools that you wouldn't ordinarily get in college.
That's true.
And what I ended up seeing, just to go back from my own personal experience, when I went to Georgia Tech to do my master's, right? We're
Hmm.
talking Georgia Tech. I came in on the
Prestigious
GEM
school.
program,
Hmm.
the GEM fellowship, with about 30 to 40 other HBCU graduates from
Hmm.
all over the diaspora, right?
Okay.
We show up at Georgia Tech and we're in these classes, and students from Harvard and Yale and MIT and
Hmm.
UCLA and Texas and University of Georgia are in these same classes with us, and they're struggling.
That's true.
And we're looking around going, well, I got that in my junior year. I took that class junior year. This is really just a refresher for
I
me,
got you.
right?
Yeah. Facts.
So
Facts.
that was one of the most rewarding things that I saw as a student
Hmm.
that HBCUs bring to the table. The fact that you
Wow.
get so much experience and so much exposure to things
Hmm.
that a lot of students at other schools, we see it in Tallahassee,
Hmm. All
just
the time.
communicating with Florida State. When I talk to students from Florida State, they're like, wow, you guys are doing this. Your students are
Hmm.
traveling here. Your students are participating in this competition. They're learning these tools.
Right.
Yeah, because we're able to do that. The other thing
Hmm.
that I think benefits students at HBCUs is the professional side. So as Dr. Muhammad was just mentioning,
Hmm.
as you know from FAMU, we have a huge relationship with our alumni who are now in the industry.
Hmm.
So they come back specifically to recruit.
That's
Mhm.
right.
And they're kind of almost taught as students, when you graduate, you go to work, you want to immediately get involved in recruitment. So, we have career fairs, as you remember, that,
Mhm.
we have 400, 500 companies show up at a career fair.
Wow.
And, we have students from Florida State who are trying to come to our career fair
Yeah, all the
because
time.
the companies are there
That's
Yeah.
right.
and they're not at Florida State,
Mhm.
right? So that professional exposure is
Right.
priceless, and you think that, well, is this a tokenism thing? Are they coming because they got to fill some, check some box on the quota? And my answer is no, because you know how it is when you're in industry. It's about money, right?
Right,
And
that's
if you're
true.
not if you're not producing as a graduate, then they're not going to come.
That's true.
So the fact that the students prepare and they're producing when they graduate, that brings companies back, and it's a
Mhm.
it's a one hand wash the other relationship, right? That allows us to
Absolutely.
leverage those relationships with those companies to build more
Mhm.
experiences, and the cycle keeps going for our students.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say is the thing that stands out the most to me about
Okay.
HBC.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Same thing with the FSU College of Engineering, FAMU FSU College of Engineering. Students would want to know particular companies. They say we want to hire from FAMU,
Right.
right? And as I was graduating with my master's, I had the opportunity to interview with Microsoft at the FAMU Career Fair on campus in our new gymnasium, and that was a once in a lifetime experience for me, which landed me at Microsoft a few years later. So I can actually testify that those are true statements. Dr. Gaucher.
Yeah, I think one great job that all three of our schools do is prepare students for graduate school,
Mhm.
master's, PhD level.
Right.
I know just, my situation at Morehouse, we've actually had several students recently to graduate with their PhDs this
Wow.
year
Mhm.
that I taught at Morehouse. I hired one
Wow.
as a postdoc. Another one just got hired, picked on as a postdoc at Utah. Um, I got one of Gene alums that finished at Hampton and went to Georgia Tech, and I got her working for me now as a research scientist at Morehouse, and she's doing a rock star job. And I think that the HBCU experience that at least the folks on this talk, we really give it to them straight before they go
Mhm.
off and,
Mhm.
and consider graduate school. Because it's not just about it's just not about the books when you go work on a graduate program, especially the PhD. And so
Right.
making sure that they understand what they're getting into and understand how to navigate the system, the politics, getting on a job market, making sure they have opportunities, and giving them those research experiences while they're in undergrad, so that they know exactly what research is and how it can be beneficial. Because that's what got me into this role. I didn't know anything about PhDs and grad school. I just knew computers were cool and I wanted to get a job. So
Yeah. Understood.
we,
Understood.
we do a really good job at HBCUs of giving them that research exposure, and it's good to see it pay off.
One of,
Absolutely.
let me interject that one of the
Please,
things
please,
is
please.
that we do is that we start talking about, well, they come in wanting a job.
Yeah.
We start talking about graduate school as a freshman.
Mm.
They get research opportunities as freshmen, but they
Wow.
also get that special information on how do
Mhm.
you conduct yourself when you're going out here to industry. So they're
Mhm.
getting both
Right.
simultaneously.
Right.
And so when our students go out here and they work in industry or they go interning in industry, we don't just give them the book stuff. Okay, that's automatic. We have to do that.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
we sit down with them and tell them how they need to conduct themselves,
Correct.
what they are going to face,
Mhm.
how they are going to behave. There's all the intangibles. And,
Wow.
and making sure they're not afraid to say, I didn't understand what you just said. Could you please repeat that? Or could you explain this part of what assignment that you gave me? Because you realize our kids are going to Microsoft, Google, Apple. They're going to all of these top companies, and they're coming from an HBCU.
Mhm.
We make sure that there's no problem with that for them because we prepare them for that as well. And then on top of that, we're preparing them for graduate school and letting them know why graduate school is important.
Mhm.
Okay, we want them to have more than just that bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
I mean, students at Harrington can get, if I recommend them to go to Carnegie Mellon, they don't have to take the GRE.
Right. Okay.
All right, why is that?
Really?
It is
Okay.
because, no, it's because of a history of sending students there that have been so successful.
Mhm.
But we also send them to Georgia Tech. We're also sending them to Rochester Institute of Technology. They're also going to MIT. They're also going to these places. So if we were not doing a good job, if our students were not prepared, these schools are not taking them just because they are of color and they want to count a number,
Right.
right?
That's
And,
true.
and I've had companies coming in, and I know they come in just to see where we're at, and I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
I don't even have a problem, because I put those students in front of them, and by the time that we do that and they leave, if they weren't recruiting at Hampton, they are now, and then they're
Okay.
coming back.
Mhm.
So we know what we're dealing with because we all experienced it. I came from industry, I understand. So we make sure these kids walk away with the total package and they know how to conduct themselves.
You know, that's profound because for me personally, you know, my experience going into corporate, first of all, the recruiters came and sometimes there's a communication barrier, right? Where folks may not just be understanding of the interview process itself. Nevertheless, them not having program before they got to college, right? So I knew that FAMU had prepared me, but I also went back to get a master's degree to ensure that I was at the level that I wanted to be before moving to the next level, right? So the next question is, what is one myth that you'd like to debunk about HBCUs? If someone asks me that question, I would like to debunk the myth that we don't get a quality education. And that's where I'll start. So I'll ask you all, what's one myth that you would like to debunk about HBCUs?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was gonna say.
Yeah, all right, cool, cool,
That
cool.
is the myth.
That is
You
it.
know, that somehow you're gonna be deficient. And really what, you know, like I said in my talk, in my answer a second ago,
Okay.
what you see happening is yes, there may be a difference in the quality of resources,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just because dollars may flow at a much higher rate to
Right.
predominantly white institutions than they
Talk
do
about it.
to HBCUs. We can have a whole nother panel discussion about
Oh, that's right.
the
Equitable pay.
illegality of that, right? How that's been a injustice that's been done to people of color in this country
Mm-hmm.
since the founding of this country, right? And that many of these schools have been owed that money for a very long time.
I agree.
But I digress. That's a whole nother discussion. But what I was saying is, even though we might be deficient in resources compared to a Harvard or an MIT,
Mm-hmm.
what you find is the faculty are extra caring, right?
Mhm.
And they work extra hard to make
Right.
sure students are prepared.
That's true.
And not only do they do that, but we, as both Gene and Kenneth were talking about, we make sure that we put students in positions where they can succeed as best as possible. So
Wow.
if that means you're getting internships, yes. If that means
Mhm.
you're doing undergraduate research experiences, yes. You're working at government labs, yes.
Mhm.
You're going on co-ops, or you're part of a hackathon competition, or
Facts.
name it. We're going to make sure we put our students in these places that,
Hmm.
frankly, at a lot of predominantly white institutions, students of color don't get a
Mhm.
lot of those same chances. I mean,
That's
I can
true.
speak from my own personal experience. When I was at Georgia Tech, there was an unwritten rule that you had to go find out what was happening from the secretaries, because they would not tell a lot of the Black students what
Mhm.
was going on,
That's
right?
true.
So we made it a point to get very close to the secretary, so we knew, hey, Google's on campus, or hey, you knew those
Yeah,
those
no, I
things
get it.
because they would let you know.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. That's the big myth, is that somehow you're going to be unprepared. And I know I talk to a lot of students when they come in, especially students that have ambitions to go to graduate school, and
Mhm.
that's one of their number one fears is, well, I feel like I'm not going to be ready when I go to graduate school. And I'm like, just trust the process, right? Trust it. Because when you get through and you do what you have to do here, I guarantee you, you'll be able to succeed anywhere you go. And that's been proven, right? If you look at most of the Black PhDs have come from historically Black institutions. Most of the Black doctors, lawyers, that's where they come from. So there is no deficiency. And that's a myth that I hope we can break very soon.
Got it. Thank you for saying that. Dr. Gaucher, what's one myth you'd like to debunk about HBCUs?
I won't say a myth, but I will say I will give a hidden gem.
All right, cool.
I would say our students
Hidden gem.
they bring a certain factor to tech positions that sometimes the students at the big research schools don't have, right?
Talk about it.
There may be an abstract data type that my Morehouse student might not know, but my student will know how to, present what he knows and communicate and problem solve. And there's a lot of other important skills that are needed to elevate and be a leader at a tech company that I would say my students will have, that a lot of students that won't have.
Talk about
that will elevate them into higher ranks at the companies. And so sometimes that goes under the radar. And then you see these people that are at these companies that are in these major roles and positions that come from HBCUs.
Wow.
Because they have those skills, those well-rounded skills. And kind of piggybacking on what Gene said, that extra preparation that we give them that makes them well-rounded is really critical. I would say in terms of myths, what people don't really realize is that if you have a school, I'll just take my next door neighbor, Georgia Tech, right? If everybody at Georgia Tech comes in, already know how to code already, then common sense says they're going to be a good coder because they were a good coder before they got to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
It's not that they're doing a better job of teaching. It's just that student 9 times out of 10 was 10 times more prepared than the student that came to our school. So it's not fair to really say, look at the end product and say that one school's better at teaching and one school's not. I think that you have to really look at the starting point and the delta of where we take them to really appreciate the impact that we provided as HBCUs.
But I want to say this too, is that here's the thing. We're not going to let a student who is capable of getting a B get a C.
I hear
that
you.
Student comes in my office and I'm saying, you can do better than this. Okay. If they can get an A, I don't want to see a B. Do you understand? I'm going to find out what's going on with you. What's happening? Now, I taught at a PWI.
Okay.
We were not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go to do that level. You see? You get in there, you teach, you be there for your office hours, and they care more about the research you're doing than anything else. Now, and they'll say it's not your business to raise them. That's not it. But see, at an HBCU, I'm telling you, it is our business to raise them. And so I have had a parent to sign a form when they walk in that I can contact you if there's something going on. And if this student is not working up to their potential, as I say to a parent, we're going to work this thing out together. And we're going to make sure that we get them up to their potential. There's nothing wrong with a C student if that's the best that they can do. But if they're an A student, we're not going to be satisfied with that student getting a C. And that is and Jason is saying yes. Because that is the difference.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I can't tell you, just to kind of piggyback off that, I can't tell you how many former students of mine's weddings I've been to.
Yes.
I've had kids that I played on they played on my basketball team that I was coaching.
Okay.
People I've helped move. I mean, we have relationships that go way deeper than what happens in the classroom. I can't tell you a professor other than one at any of the predominantly white institutions that I went to that I had that kind of relationship with.
Absolutely.
And that one professor was my dissertation chair,
Mm-hmm.
who I had a personal relationship with. Most of the people that I had classes from, I mean, half the time I didn't see them because there were TAs who taught the classes, which, I mean, like Gene was saying, that's great for the professor because the professor can crank out research. And I think there's a place for that. So I'm not putting that down. I'm not saying that's a negative because as professors, that's what we have to do as well. But I think if you're trying to produce students that are, as Kenneth was saying, that are well-rounded, there's more to just filling their brain with information and knowledge. I mean, you've got to be a mentor. You got to be someone who can provide some guidance when they need it. You may have to be someone, real talk, who's got to go down to the jail and talk to somebody to get somebody's record straight. I mean, we've all had to do these types of things, right? Because
I hear you.
Because as Gene was saying, you don't want to let anybody slip through the cracks. And I personally have seen it with, with students that I worked with that came through that were D-level students when they got in, and watched them graduate, move on, and get master's degrees. And now they're working at NSA or FBI or, Homeland Security, doing fantastic things. And these are people that probably would have gotten written off.
That's right.
Right. So that's what I love about being at HBCU. That's why I'm still here.
I hear you.
Unless, the campus blows up, I'm going to probably still be at that HBCU until I leave. And if I leave FAMU, I'm going to another HBCU, most likely, because to me, that's what education is about. It's not just
that's
the
love.
research you do. It's more so the minds and the persons that you shape, so that they can go on and carry that same torch forward and do the same thing for somebody else. That's what you want to do. To me, that's education.
That's it. That's why we're here.
That's a beautiful experience because it relates personally to me. You talked about the grooming and the professional growth and the hackathons and the internships, and they have this thing called imposter syndrome, right? But you actually, you get to the market and you meet the market at its height and you say, I deserve to be here. And I think Dr. Gaucher said something that we bring something very unique to the table in these corporate environments. And that's a diverse perspective. That's representation of our communities and how we were raised and how we think, right? And so I think that those things are very important. Thank you. I feel like I'm being fed fruit right now. I really appreciate it. Another thing. So the next question, how has attending an HBCU shaped your professional experience? I heard Dr. Black say that, he's going to be there till the building burns down, no matter what. I feel that deep in my heart, something about the marching 100 when those horns hit, it amp you up a little bit, when the snare snaps and the drum majors do the split, we understand. So I just want to say, what about your HBCU experience has shaped your professional experience?
I think, well, let me start off by saying I have 5 children that are grown and all 5 of them went to HBCUs.
Wow.
I went to a HBCU. My husband went to an HBCU and he graduated from Harvard. I graduated from Illinois Institute of Tech, and we all went to HBCUs.
That's good.
Okay, so not all the same ones, but we all went.
Culture.
And the culture. Yeah. And they knew as they were growing up that they were going to go to an HBCU. That was understood. They just had to pick the one they wanted to go to.
Right.
And I'm saying that going to, being at an HBCU, attending an HBCU as a student, you always feel like when you go back to that institution that you're at home.
Right.
I don't know how, I'm going to say it's not about, let's, we got a good education. We got that. But when they go back for homecoming, and I'll give this and I'll stop and let someone jump in. When Dr. Humphreys passed, let me just say that. 4 of my children graduated from FAMU. 4. Okay. And they were like, oh my God, I mean, it was like, I can't even express it. I can't even explain it. Do you understand? And they've been out a long time, right? But it was almost like someone in their family had passed,
Wow.
right? Because they all went to that HBCU.
Mhm.
Now, the HBCU I went to, I still have that connection to it. Now, I went to Illinois Institute of Tech. I went to Florida State. Nothing, no shade on that. They were great
Yeah, I hear
schools.
you. I hear you. I hear you.
They treated me well. But you always remember that HBCU that you attended, because
Mhm.
when you were there, it was family. And
Wow.
it doesn't, it just, that's the only way I can express it. Now, how do you take that to industry? Because you have trials at an HBCU,
Right.
right? You got to figure out how to get your money and keep it, right? I mean, and
That's true.
graduate for 4 years. You're hustling. You're and I went to Carnegie Mellon for brought students there, and there was a black panel that talked to us, and there was about 3 or 4 students there had went to an HBCU, and I
Mhm.
said, well, they asked the question, how did you maneuver? You know,
Wow.
never mind the courses, they were prepared. How did you maneuver and navigate Carnegie Mellon? You're up here in Pittsburgh. They
Mhm.
said, we came from HBCUs.
We can make it through the fight.
We knew we were in
Yeah.
lines for financial aid. We knew how to make it happen. You know, we knew how to do that. There was no problem that we couldn't figure out how to navigate because we went to HBCUs. Now
Right.
that you can look at that as a negative, but they
Fact.
were taught how to succeed no matter what. They were
Mhm.
taught how to navigate their
Mhm.
wherever they were. And they
Right.
do it in industry, they did it in graduate schools, and they were successful. I see Jason saying yes. Now we can laugh about this because we all went
Right.
to HBCU.
I got
Those
you.
experiences are like none other.
Mhm.
None other.
Facts. Major facts.
And let me piggyback off that. I remember riding in a car. This was wow, this might have been 10, 15 years ago. And there was one of those was the super shuttle, right? Where you've got like 14 people in it. And so we're all in the car, and there was everyone's black that's in the car, right? And so we're all from different institutions. But there were 4 of us from HBCUs, 2 of them were from Morehouse, right? And so one of the gentlemen in the back was looking for a pen. And
Oh,
he's, patting himself and he's looking, and he's like, oh, I don't have a pen. The guys from Morehouse looked at him like he was insane, right? And I
I hear
said,
you.
well,
I hear you.
what's that about? And they're like, hey, when we go to Morehouse, you're taught you don't go anywhere without a pen,
I
right?
hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
So it's a funny story, but the point I'm making is what Gene was saying, is that you learn a culture of living at an HBCU that carries you throughout your career, right?
Entire.
You learn
Yeah.
not just how to navigate, but you learn just how to carry yourself. You
Mhm.
learn
Right.
how to be presentable. You learn how to make sure you're prepared. You
Mhm.
learn that there's going to be instances where someone's going to call on you to talk, and you might not have prepared for that, but you
Right.
better have something to say, right? And so we all get that at HBCUs. And again, like Dr. Muhammad was saying, no shade on the majority institutions, because they give you some great gems too. But that extra thing, right? I mean, you get that extra thing, and it's hard to quantify it.
That's right.
And I come from a family where not everybody went to an HBCU. I'm the only of my siblings that went to an HBCU. The other ones went to John Hopkins, Case Western Reserve, and Rutgers, right?
Top institution.
So, they're doing wonderful things. But, when we get together and we're talking about our college experience, there's something missing.
I hear you.
Right? And I'm looking at them like, well, we got to do this, and there's an extra thing that you get at an HBCU that really shapes you professionally. Not just the experience of being around your people, and not just the experience of, meeting famous people. I mean, we had President Obama when he was running for office at FAMU, right? Just sitting in a room talking to us like we were friends of his. I mean, that's not something you're going to get at a lot of other institutions. But then on top of that, and I think what's most important is you're taught at HBCUs how to navigate life.
That's right.
So, you learn. One of the courses I took that stuck with me to this day was a introduction to Black psychology course that I took at FAMU. Learned so much about myself and about my place in the world.
Talk about it.
The place of Black people in the world, and it helps you see a perspective of your life in industry when you move forward. It helps you see yourself in a whole different perspective.
I hear you.
than you would get had you not had that course.
Mhm.
So I think it's that type of thing that you get that's extra. That is the wonderful plus that you get from being at HBCU.
This has been, it took me back in time, right? To go and hear you all and feel the energy and understand that family atmosphere at HBCUs, and to understand, the professionalism and the grooming and the talent that is sitting right there on HBCU's campus. I'm going to ask one more question and I'm going to end it there. And I'm going to open it up to the audience if they want to ask any questions. But that question is, how can companies, so we got this big initiative going around right now talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? And everybody's looking to hire minority talent. Everybody's putting money toward it. They got metrics, and they're tracking these metrics, and they want folks, caliber folks, right? Nobody's lowering the bar. They want caliber folks in the industry. But what can the HBCUs do to promote partnerships and to help build those recruiting pipelines into industry?
You got to make sure. Well, we have a little process that we go through. Okay, so especially if I get a new company, not so much the ones we've had, we've developed, but say I get a new company. The first thing I want to let them know is that what we have on campus. I always send them our curriculum, but more importantly, I tell them they have to come here and engage. We want an info session. I want them to tell our students their brand. Okay. Their brand. And some companies think you already know their brand because they're great, but they need to tell our students their brand. And for a computer science student, I want them to leave there with our students knowing exactly the types of careers they're going to have for that company. And so we prep our students on, make sure they have questions to ask, make sure they look that company up. So that's another piece. But at the same time, our students cannot come into an info session with a t-shirt and gym shorts on. We don't allow it. I don't care if it's Google. I don't care if it's Google is probably the most lax company that you have. Not having that. No, they're coming into that info session looking like they want a job. They want a career. And so when we talk, we make that relationship. Then I take our ACM students, our cyber club students, and put them in front of those students. I invite them to come into some of my classrooms because I want them to see these students and how they learn and how they engage. Let me tell you, they may not come into that department knowing or appreciating the intelligence of our students, but when they leave, I make sure they have taken the whole circle, that they understand. And these students ask them some tough questions, and they see how they engage in that classroom. And they come correct. They come looking like they want a job. They're not coming in there looking all hazmats. We're not having it because I'm at the door. And if they are not appropriately, they don't look appropriate, they're not getting in. And we give the students, we make sure that room is packed. Because let me tell you something, it is a business. If they come on campus and they have 5 students in that room, they're not coming back. Okay? When I was at FAMU, I made sure that they got points for attending those info sessions. And I do the same thing at Hampton. You don't come, you don't get any credit. So you better show up, you better look right, and you better have some questions to ask that company. I don't want to see your phone and you texting because I will take it from you. And we're clear. That's how you get them to come back.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Muhammad. Dr. Black, Dr. Gaucher.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. Branding is the main thing. So if you want to get a presence at any HBCU or any school, but I mean definitely with the HBCUs, you got to brand yourself, right? You got to keep in mind that even though, like Gene was saying, you might be Google, you might be Facebook, you're competing.
Right.
Our students are looking at your company and they're stacking you up against the 50 or 60 other companies that are showing up that are speaking to students. So if you can't come and just do a one-off, right? You can't come and say, hey, we're here. We got some jobs for you. See you later. Go apply. That doesn't work because students are looking for engagement from you, right?
I hear you.
So what we tell companies, come to classes, speak to students, get involved in our career center, set up information sessions. If you can get connected with certain professors, maybe you can provide those professors with real world projects that students can work on in the class. So now they're seeing how your company culture is.
Okay.
That's how you get the students.
That's good.
That's an excellent answer.
I know you. I paid careful attention to how you phrased the question. You said, "What can HBCUs do?" So I'll touch on that. One thing I hear from my fellow colleagues sometimes is that they're not as prepared for when those companies do knock on the door. And when I say prepared, I feel like the departments should have clearly written up what they want in a partnership and be able to put that in that company's hand and have a document, a 1 page or something they can read, get a high level understanding of, hey, this is what we're looking for with our industry partners. Boom, right? That way it's clear. Like, hey, if you want to recruit, there's career services. If you want to partner, then let's talk, right? And this is what we're looking for in a partnership. And it's clear what those terms are, whether there's money behind it or not. I think those things should be thought through before those companies come. Because a lot of times the companies don't know what they don't know, and they're looking for guidance. And if you're not ready, then they're gonna move on. And so maximizing those opportunities, I think, is something that we can always continue to get good at.
That's a good point.
Those are excellent feedback. I have a question in the chat from Mr. George Mitchum saying he would like to have the contact info of the panelists. So I'm going to drop your emails in there if you don't mind. To our attendees, I know we got 4 or 5 minutes here, but if anybody wants to come off of mute and ask a question, show their face on the camera for our prestigious guest today, please feel free. Okay, and
I'm going to put in the chat my Hampton email.
please.
For this experience, I use Gmail, but I want to make sure they have my Hampton email.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to either one. I'm going to see it, but I just want to make sure that everybody has the Hampton email.
All right, cool.
And I can give you Gene's cell phone number too if y'all want that.
Yeah, we can all do that.
We'll be calling you on the weekend,
and we
Gene.
encourage you call her after 10 p.m.
Preferably weekends and holidays.
Hey, I work on weekends. And I know your phone numbers because I've called you on the weekend for something, right?
Oh, look at the time.
Yeah, I know, right?
Shout out to you all for being here today, and shout out to BDPA for this amazing conference and creating these amazing experiences. I just want to say thank you to you all, Dr. Gene Muhammad, Dr. Kenneth Gaucher, and Dr. Jason Black for being here today. This was a very fruitful conversation. If the cup was half full, it's now all the way full on my side, so I definitely appreciate that. And we certainly heard some great things today. I think we heard what the HBCUs do to nurture the students, to groom the students. We talked about some of the struggles of the industry and when we get to the next level, right? We talked about a lot of the programming that goes into creating a professional and why it's personal for you all to be at the HBCUs, right? And I can relate to all of those things, and I hope our guests today as well. So I hope everybody took some of those nuggets away. I just want to say thank you. Please check out the conference platform to check out what's next on the schedule. And I hope everybody enjoys the remainder of the conference. But I just want to say thank you again to our prestigious guests.